Right, hello, and welcome back to Not Overthinking. Tamor, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. My throat is quite sore. I've had a rough few days of hay fever. Last weekend was maybe the worst hay fever I've ever had in my life, to the point where I was thinking, man, if I knew that every day was going to be like this, life would not be worth living. And I think like the only other time in recent memory where I felt like, man, if every day would be like this, life would be worth living, was when I was in fourth year of university and I had like a couple of weeks of really bad back pain and I just
Mm.
like couldn't do anything. And I was like, wow, this is terrible. Like, what is the point? You know? And so, yeah, I'm sure you can tell from my voice, it's a little bit hoarse. So I'm getting through it.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Sounds like
Yeah.
your week's been pretty grim then.
It's been grim on the hay fever front. How about you?
Yeah, things have been good. Just got back from the gym. Had a hench session of chest and triceps. First time I've been to the gym in a very long time. Because
Oh,
normally I just do my personal trainer sessions at his home gym.
yeah.
That was kind of nice. And we had the whole squad in the living room today doing a ton of filming for a new YouTube channel that we are starting in the business.
Oh, nice. What's that?
It is a YouTube channel for the Part-Time YouTuber Academy. And so it's going to
Oh,
be a YouTube channel focused on how to do YouTube, how to be a creator, how to grow on YouTube, all that sort of stuff.
so it's going to be like free content, and then
Yep.
hopefully some people will then buy the academy.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's
Nice.
the idea. But pretty good times overall. When was last? I feel like it's been a while since we talked. We didn't have a podcast episode last week for various reasons.
Yeah, we had
But
one
I
the
feel
week
like
before. I think it's
I feel
been
like in the last 2 weeks or so, I've now finally figured out like the org chart and the structure for the business.
really.
And I had this like moment of clarity. I think it was last Thursday, where it was as if I was blind and now I could see.
Oh,
Now that
wow.
I'd sort of like literally had it written on the whiteboard exactly what our organization looked like, who all the team members were in each position, and crucially where the holes were, where we potentially need to hire more people.
Yeah.
So now we're looking to hire maybe 5 or 6 people over the next few months, and I'm learning about hiring and how to like
Awesome.
interview people and stuff because I feel like I did a pretty kind of make stuff up as I go along job of it to this point. But I've been reading all these books about like management and things like that now, which are helping with that process. So
Wait,
it's all
so
very exciting.
what was the insight that led to the I was blind and now I can see moment?
So it's going to sound weird, but actually, so I'll try and give you the context. Before, when I was drawing out, for the uninitiated, an org chart is like an organizational chart where you basically draw a spider diagram with boxes, sort of like a hierarchy tree type thing that says what all the different roles in your business are. And so
Right.
normally you would have like the CEO, and then underneath them you would have like the operations department and the marketing department and the finance department and the sales team and the product department. And within operations, you might have A, B, and C. Within marketing, you might have this person, that person, that person. Within sales, you might have the prospecting sales and like the closers. And basically, every business will have this sort of
Yeah.
chart to figure out what its structure is. And before I was thinking, well, our business of like YouTube content and courses and stuff doesn't neatly fit into any of these like corporate charts that you see in these sorts of business books.
Right.
Because we do some free content and some paid content and some courses, and we have a live course, the YouTuber Academy, and within the free content we've got like YouTube and 3 channels on YouTube and the podcast and Instagram and Twitter and all this kind of stuff. And basically, I was massively overcomplicating it in the past. Whereas the insight like last week was, oh my gosh, it's literally just marketing and operations that everything in our business fits into pretty nicely.
Mm.
And if we like ignore all of the different types of content and just treat it as content,
Yeah.
then essentially the process for creating all of it is identical, i.e., pre-production, production, and post-production,
Yeah.
which is nothing like new. It's like what TV crews and film crews and people have been doing since the dawn of time. But I just never quite had that, just that those boxes in my mind that this
Mm.
is actually what we do. And so now it's like, oh, well, if we have something we need done, then it goes to our pre-production team initially, which is like research and writing. Then it goes to our production team, which is basically me filming myself. And then it goes to our post-production team, which is like three editors and animators and illustrators and potentially hiring more for that. And stuff like gets passed along from one team to the next.
Yeah.
And the director of operations kind of manages this whole flow. And that sounds really simple, and it is really simple. But I've been sort of threshing around for the last 2 years, basically trying to get to that particular structure, which is the structure that TV media movies have been using for generations.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh shit, okay, sick. Now I know what the business is and where the holes are, and it felt like a real moment of clarity. It's been so long since I've had one of those moments. Like I genuinely can't remember the last time I felt that sense of, oh my god, this is a thing.
Yeah.
It
So
was, it was cool. Yeah.
in the pre-Enlightenment era, if you will,
Mm.
what was like what were things like in your head? Was just like everyone doing a bit of everything? Like people just didn't have clearly defined roles? Like what was the difference, now that you know that this is the structure?
Yeah, so in the pre-Enlightenment era, before I came across, I think like more than 2 years ago, before I came across the concept of an organizational chart, where it was just like me and maybe one other person in the business, it was like, oh, the business is sort of split up into free content and paid content and like YouTube and Instagram and Twitter and social media, and it's sort of splitting it up in my head in terms of those particular silos. Then in the pre-Enlightenment era, once I discovered what an organizational chart, it became basically that, but with people heading up different departments. So we had Gareth as our head of courses, and we've got Angus as like head of the main YouTube channel, and Christian as head of the second YouTube channel, and like Joe who's in charge of social media, and like Jakob who's in charge of Twitter, and like Elizabeth who's in charge of the newsletter, and these different people responsible for different like basically content types within the business. And the insight enlightenment wise was this book I was reading called Attraction, which is like standard business book, but it's very much a prescriptive way of organizing, structuring a business, how to like a very prescriptive approach to running meetings, to setting goals. He calls it the entrepreneur operating system. And within that, he basically says that like every business can be boiled down to operations, marketing, and finance. And whatever your business is, it's going to fit into those three categories. And I was like, oh, okay, come on. Like, this is all just corporate BS. But then when I tried to shoehorn our business into those categories, I realized, oh my God, like, this guy's totally right. Any business can fit into those categories. And it made perfect sense to split things up by, like, the writer team and the editing team, rather than the team in charge of the YouTube channel, the team in charge of the podcast, the team in charge of
Right,
Twitter, the
right.
team in charge of Instagram.
Yeah, yeah.
Because all of the activities that the writer's doing were the same. All of the editing activities is broadly the same.
Yeah.
And now that we have enough people in the team where it make like, you know, now it's easier for Gareth to say that he is one of the writers on the team,
Yeah.
rather than, oh, he's kind of responsible for some of the courses and some of the YouTube content and sort of writes a bit of the Twitter stuff and sort of writes a bit of this
Yeah,
and a
yeah.
bit of that. So it sounds all trivial when I say it out loud, but like it was like, shit, this is so good.
Okay, interesting. So it sounds like you've just kind of split things up into, I don't know what it'd be called, like
More
functional
sensible
units
buckets,
rather
right?
than.
Yeah,
Sorry?
yeah, functions rather than content types, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
functions rather than products.
Yeah, exactly. Cool, nice. So what's this going to change for you guys going forwards?
We now have much more organizational clarity, as they say, in terms of who is actually doing what. Because that
Okay.
was a big issue where people would, I'd be like, what? Someone would ask me, "Oh, you've got these 8 people on the team. What do they actually do?" And I'd be like, "Oh, that's a really hard question to answer."
Oh, really? Okay.
And these people, like for example, Angus's parents would be like, "Angus, what do you do for the business?" He'd be like, "Well, a bit of everything. I don't really know. I sort of work for a YouTuber." That sort of vibe, which
Yeah.
everyone would have said, except maybe our editors who had defined roles. And now it's like Gareth is the writer on the team, Angus is director of operations. We're looking to hire a director of marketing. We're looking to hire a videographer. Christian is like the head of our post production team. Like it's much more structured in that kind of fashion.
Yeah.
And so that's really helping in terms of like, the other day, the other magical insight I had was that setting goals for a team is actually really useful. So in the past, I've always been very anti goals, like, who can really control a YouTube subscriber count? Like, what's the point of having that as a goal? What's the point of tracking metrics? But now I've come on to the point of view that I, as the leader of the business, I can set what goals I want the business to achieve. And crucially, it's down to the team to make those goals happen and to come up with a strategy for going towards those goals. And before I thought, well, I used to think, well, if I want to hit, I don't know, 2 million on YouTube by the end of the year, oh, that feels really hard. We're going to need to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I was basically owning all of the metrics myself in my own head.
Yeah. Yeah.
And therefore, anytime we would do something, it would be this profound sense of like, oh, God, this is
Yeah.
more stuff
Yeah.
I have on my plate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then one thing that a friend and mentor said to me is that, do you realize that having a director of operations means you can give them the metric and the goal you want to go for, and then they can figure the strategy out. You don't have to do it yourself.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
was like, no, you're shitting me. Like, there's no way. And he was like, no, genuinely, try it. And so the next day I was like, all right, Angus, if I said to you, I want 3.5 million YouTube subscribers by this time next year, how would you go about it? He was like, Oh, that's a good question. I guess we do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever, whatever, whatever. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. I can set a direction and pick a goal, which is a somewhat arbitrary goal, but
Yeah, yeah,
I can give ownership of that goal to one of the people in the team. And
yeah,
then when they have the ownership of the thing, they will find a way to make it happen. And even if we don't hit like, I actually don't care about hitting the exact number. Don't tell them this, but at least it moves us in a direction that makes sense.
yeah,
And I've just been so surprised as to how much people like having a goal to work towards. Like the other day, we had a call with our social media managers who work as freelancers for the business. And they were saying, oh, it's great that we now have a goal of maybe 500K on Instagram by the end of the year. That means that if we want to hit that goal right now, we're not going to hit it at the current growth rate. Therefore, this is the growth rate we're aiming for. Therefore, we need to do twice as many posts as we're doing and maybe try these tactics.
yeah,
And right now, we're meeting once a month for a social media team, but I think we should make it like once every 2 weeks instead so that we can just move faster and get things done. And I was hearing this thinking, oh my God, like this is absolutely perfect. I didn't
yeah,
realize that you could do this, just set a goal for the team and they would figure out a way to make it happen.
yeah.
So that's been cool.
Nice. Yeah, I think the thing that I often think about goals is that, like, I mean, yeah, the point is to hit the goal, but also having a goal informs what a plausible strategy would be. And so, if you have a goal to get to a certain number of subscribers or something, and so far everyone's just been operating on the assumption that, yeah, if we keep churning out, 2 videos a week, we'll do well. Then having that goal and just, having a very basic model of, like, working backwards from that goal, how many videos a week do we need to put out? You might realize, oh shit, if we want to do that just by making videos, we need to do 10 videos a week, which we obviously can't do with a team of 5 people or something. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people, I think goals get a lot of hate of like, oh man, there's like so much uncertainty, the higher ups just want to like set this goal and like, there's so much that's outside of control. And yeah, that's all true. And, you can account for that uncertainty in your model, obviously. But like, the goal also informs like what is even a plausible strategy, basically.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the other goal that I've been like very hesitant to have as a goal is a revenue target, for example. And so like what this book Traction says is, set a 3-year picture of what you want your revenue to look like 3 years from now. I was thinking, oh God, like that just feels completely arbitrary, number plucked out of thin air. But all right, let's say 3 years from now, I don't know, let's say we're doing $10 million a year in revenue. And I was like, and then it's like, okay, how much profit do you want to be doing? I'm like, okay, let's say 70% margins, which is pretty solid. Let's say 7 million a year in profit.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh wow, okay, that means we have 3 million a year to play with in terms of hiring people and like spending on stuff.
Yeah. How
Right
do
now
you
we're
allocate
spending
3 million?
like 250K on team members, so we could literally like 12x the size of the team.
Right. Yeah.
And still, we're like, okay, so if we were to 12x the size of the team, if we literally had unlimited resources, what could potentially we make? That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And now this like ridiculous revenue goal of like 10 million it feels like less of a black box and more like we actually have a path, a plausible path,
Yeah.
a plausible strategy that we can head in that general direction. And
Yeah.
I don't actually care about the numbers at the end of the day, but it's so nice having a direction to work in that's a little bit more ambitious than let's just continue doing what we've been doing for 2 years and hope that it continues to work.
Yeah. Nice. I like it. Sounds like happy days at, what is it, Ali Abdal Limited? I don't know what you call yourselves.
That's the one. Yeah, I feel like we need a better name for the team. Right now it's Ali Abdal Limited.
Have you considered Temur Abdal Limited?
I have, yes.
Yeah.
I think that was our second choice.
Okay. Yeah. It's most people's.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, we do need I feel like we do need a proper name for the team because I feel like there is something to the team identifying as being part of like the same team. And for that to have a name other than Ali Abdal Limited, I think would be good.
Yeah.
But if anyone has any ideas, let us know in the YouTube comments down below.
Maybe you can call yourself the Study Vlog Squad.
Very good. David Dobrik reference, was that?
Yeah.
Nice.
Who,
Yeah,
by the way, is back. He started vlogging again as of like last week or this week.
Oh, incredible! I'll have to
Just
check
two
out his
vlogs,
stuff.
yeah.
I guess he's been anti-cancelled,
Yeah, I think he's broadly been uncancelled.
reinstated, uncancelled.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like he did a good job of his apology. His apology 2.0.
Did he? I don't think that was terribly well received either.
Oh, the apology 2.0.
I don't know. I can't remember actually. Yeah.
Because he did an apology 1.0, which wasn't very well received at all, and then I thought his apology 2.0 was pretty reasonable, and the comments
Yeah.
seemed to be pretty reasonable, but who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, do we have an actual topic to talk about this week?
Yeah, there was something I wanted to talk about. So last weekend, I'm just mindful of time, so I haven't got a ton of time, but we might as well get started. So last weekend, you and I went to Bath for the weekend with our mum, and we also drove around a town called Devizes, where we spent the first sort of 3 years or so, 2 to 3 years of our time in the UK. We spent in Devizes. So for me, that was like a bit of year three and the whole of year four and five. And I think for you it was like one year up, right?
Yeah, so for me it was around age 8 to 11 ish.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like 7 to 10ish for me. And this was actually the first time we'd been back to Devizes since we left. Since we left in like 2006 or something like that. And I was thinking that's kind of weird in itself because it's not very far away. It's like, I don't know, 2.5 hours. Like nothing in the UK is particularly far away. And like, why didn't we think, oh, it could be interesting to go back to like, where we went to primary school
Hmm.
for a bit, but we just haven't done it. And so this was actually the first time we'd been back, and I thought it might be interesting just to kind of reflect on that experience and on just kind of look back on what life was like as a 7, 8, 9, 10 year old back in the day. So I mean, one of the things that you and I did on I think on Saturday was that we kind of drove around and visited all of our old houses for like where we used to live. So I think 3 different houses across the 3 years or something. Um, and it was just I thought it was a pretty emotional experience. Like it was like so weird being back in those places. I think everything felt a lot smaller. I guess we were physically smaller back then, and so everything just seems a bit bigger. But everything felt a lot smaller. Yeah. What did you think of it?
I thought I thought it was a great experience. It was nice revisiting those areas and seeing how they changed. Um, I particularly enjoyed our visit to the Devices Toys shop, which I vividly remember from like 2003 to 2005 because that was like the big toy shop on the high street
Yeah.
where they would have like Warhammer and Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I used to be super into those like model aeroplanes
Yeah.
and stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
And I always used to go into Devices Toys and think, oh, I really want to get this pack of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I really want to get this booster pack. I used to look at like the Warhammer and think, oh my god, like that's so expensive, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a few of my friends play Warhammer. Oh man,
Yeah.
and like those model airplane sets, be like, oh, like, if I get the cheapest one with my Eid money, that's like £7.50. Oh, but that one's that Spitfire is really cool, and that's like £25. And maybe if I save up for another 2 years, then I can get the Spitfire. Like
Yeah.
that was what was going through my mind.
Yeah.
I vividly remember those thought processes when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so it was nice kind of walking through this toy shop where it seemed nothing had really changed except that Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards had gotten shinier.
Yeah.
And we bought a pack of booster a booster pack of Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards just for the bants,
Yeah.
just for for the symbolism of it. So I thought that was cool. I think I don't know. I wouldn't describe it as a particularly emotional experience. I think my view of it was like, oh, okay, yeah, it's kind of nice to be back. It's kind of cool that this is a thing, but in the same way as it's kind of cool to like for example, it would be I would just say, oh, it's kind of cool if I see a relic from World War I or something like that. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of cool. I think World War I in particular because I have some familiarity with it, having done it at GCSE history and also having listened to a long series of podcasts about it. If it was World War II, I don't know very much about World War II, so I wouldn't have cared so much. And so it was more like this era of history that I am somewhat familiar with
Yeah.
is like revisiting it and seeing how things have changed. Why did you feel it was an emotional experience? Like, what does that word emotional mean to you?
What does that mean to me?
Because I feel
I
like
think
it's one of those things that you should say, but I've always been a little bit like, well, what does what actually mean?
I think what I mean by it is that it kind of threw me back into my sort of 7 year old self again for the first time in ages. And yeah, I think like visiting those sort of physical locations kind of look, it's almost like, if you if you hear like a song or something that used to be really popular 10 years ago and you haven't heard it in 10
Yeah.
years, then it
Yeah.
kind of immediately like transports you back to that time.
Mm.
Or like if you smell, smell this, some perfume or something that you haven't smelled for a few years or whatever, then it kind of immediately transports you
Mm.
back. I think it's kind of like that where I felt this almost like, avatar state like connection to my past self as a 7-year-old in these places kind of
Okay. Yeah.
thing, you know?
Fair play.
And I think yeah, just like that sort of connection and seeing like the kind of being in those locations. I think they obviously have a lot of meaning because we lived there for 3 years and stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, I had a similar kind of emotional experience when visiting the Pokemon Center in Tokyo in 2019,
Mm.
where Pokemon was this sort of really symbolic thing throughout my whole life, and kind of being in that place was just like super emotional. And so I think it's kind of like that where you sort of feel this sort of connectivity with your past self, well, something to that effect, where you're kind of back in your shoes from like 15 years ago, whatever it might be. But you didn't feel that at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. I did feel that. I felt that connection to my past self, in the sense that I could see myself as like a little 8 year old, like going up and down the high street, being like, "Oh my god, I really want those Pokemon cards."
Mm.
Um, I wouldn't have used the word emotional to describe that, but
Of course you would.
oh no, of course not. Like I don't have
You're a
feelings.
stoic.
Um,
I would describe it as a rational experience.
yeah, a rationalist experience, something like that. Yeah. Um, yeah, I definitely had some of that, especially when visiting the old houses and being like, "Oh yeah, we used to play here. We used to climb that tree. That was
Yeah,
cool." Like that. That's where Antonio used to live, and we used to knock on his door and be like, "Do you want to come play Pokemon?"
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just kind of nice. I think I sort of had similar experiences. So when I was in like final year of university, so the
Mm.
final year of the 6 year course, around that time, like in the final 3 years, we don't really go back to college much. I was at Emmanuel College, which is one of the colleges of Cambridge. There are 30 of them, for those
Yeah,
of you unfamiliar, and you very much kind of live there 24/7 in your first 3 years, and then most people graduate beyond that point, and that's all fine and dandy. But then when you're a medical student, you then move on to the clinical years where you're not really back in the college very much. This place where you spent like 24 hours a day for 3 years of your life.
yeah, yeah,
And so I would walk across the paddock in final year, and often just sort of have that experience of like there were like so many memories that I made here, and it was like really nice. But I think I had that to a very like intense degree at university, and
Mm.
not so intense a degree at the hometown when we were 8,
Oh,
for
really?
example. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
I wonder if we went back to Westcliff, our secondary school, if there would be a similar experience. Because I
I
feel
feel like that
like
was too recent. Like we
yeah.
went back to Southend about a year ago to watch that Bryden, Mac, and Mitchell comedy thing, and we
Mm.
kind of drove past all those places and stuff, and I think it was kind of cool, but like I feel like that was too recent.
I wonder if it's related to like the intensity of experience in the place and how much you associate the place with that experience, though. Like,
Mm.
I think in school, I don't have a particularly like strong emotional connection to school, the institution,
Yeah,
like Westcliff, the school,
yeah,
because all of the kind of memories I have of the place are less about the place itself and more about the people.
yeah.
And I think had I been like head boy or on any of the school teams for anything at all, other than chess, then I might have had some more institutional loyalty, and
Right. Yeah,
therefore feel more of a sense of, oh yeah, this was my ends.
yeah.
Whereas I think with the university and college experience, it was like I literally lived there 24/7 for 3 years, and
Right.
therefore the experience was more intense. And so coming back to it, that memory was more intense. I don't know. Mm.
Yeah, I don't think I have much institutional loyalty to our secondary school either. I imagine like walking around the corridors would be kind of an interesting experience. I'm sure I'd feel
Mm.
something. Yeah, I thought the other thing as we were kind of visiting our old houses was I was trying to think back to like what was my day-to-day life like back then, like
Mm.
what did life consist of? And one thing that I distinctly remember is that as a kid, I used to lie down on the floor a lot more.
Really? Okay.
Like if you think about the last time you laid down on the floor.
Mm.
I can't remember the last time I laid down on the floor and did something. But actually, as a kid, that was almost the default position. For any kind of activity, if you could do it lying down on the floor, you would do it lying down on the floor. Whether it's playing Game Boy, reading a book, reorganizing my Pokemon cards,
You would reorganize your Pokemon cards by lying down on the floor.
and then laying them out on the floor, and you're kind of reorganizing, by
Oh,
type,
you
by
you mean
rarity.
like face down broadly?
Yeah, like
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
imagining lying on the floor face up and thinking, how are you organizing Pokemon cards in that, in that configuration?
Yeah, it's like a Queen's Gambit, but for Pokemon. You're
Yeah.
looking up at the ceiling,
Yeah,
you
probably.
see how yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, like face down on the floor, in sort of I guess there's this yoga pose called the cobra or something, where you kind of lie down and then like your head is
Yeah.
kind of up, or you're
Head
kind
is
of leaning
nodding
on your
upward.
elbow
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like you're basically like lying on the floor and like doing your thing. And I just remember that was like I spent a lot of time in that position as a kid. And for some reason, when you grow up, you just don't do stuff on the floor as much. You don't sit
Yeah.
on the
You
floor
start moving
much. You
to a
don't lie down on
chair
the
and
floor.
a desk and things.
Yeah. And like, it's
Yeah,
not
that's
like there
weird.
weren't chairs and desks when we were kids. It's not like bed,
Yeah.
we didn't have beds and stuff. Like
We didn't have
we could have
furniture
lay
in the
down on
house.
the
Yeah.
bed. Sorry?
It's not like we didn't have furniture in the house.
Right. So that's one thing I distinctly remember of like, yeah, just like a lot of lying down on the floor. I haven't done that for a while.
I'm trying to think when, because I feel like at university I did do a fair bit of lying on the floor because
Oh, if
with
like,
my laptop open and like a book on the side or something like that. And that was good times. Often if I wanted a change of scenery from my desk, I would then lie on the floor with book and laptop in hand.
okay, interesting. Yeah.
But these days I just don't. I think partly because with all the kind of camera gear and crap around the living room, there's actually physically so little space to just lie on the floor.
Yeah.
And so that's a bit of a problem. I think even if I did have the space, I probably wouldn't default to that position, but maybe something to try out.
Yeah. I think my general point is that like when I was a kid, I feel like I think I felt a lot more like physically free. And I guess it's easier to be because you're literally like smaller. Like there's just less of you. And so
Physically free. What do you mean by that?
yeah, just like I think I just kind of mean that, I think as an adult, when you're kind of going about your day-to-day life, you look for places where your body can fit, like a chair or a bed, or like somewhere where an adult person is supposed to put their body,
Right.
right? Like you don't. Whereas I think when you're a kid, like just the whole world is kind of that. Like you often see like little kids just like sitting on the footpath, just like chilling, stuff like this, and like I don't know. I think when you're a kid, you don't really think in terms of like where am I supposed to sit, stand, lie down, or whatever.
Yeah.
You're just vibing. You're just like, hell yeah, I'll sit down on the tarmac. Yeah, like yeah, I'll lie down on the floor.
So I often feel this. I feel this acutely when I am in St Pancras station waiting for the train to St Albans, and there are no seats, and I think, right, I could stand up for the next 20 minutes,
Yeah.
or I could just sit on the floor.
Yeah.
And I look around sheepishly and think, you know what, I should just sit on the floor.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then I sit on the floor. I take my bag out. I get my phone or iPad out, and then I just read or something for 20 minutes.
yeah,
And I always feel semi self-conscious about this because no one else is really sitting on the floor, and there's this whole like, oh, the floor is really dirty, and
right,
the floor is lava or whatever the kids say these days.
right.
But then I always think like, why aren't more people just sitting on the floor? Like, it's not that bad. Like, my bum is going to be on the train seats, which are probably dirtier than the floor is at this point.
Yeah,
What is wrong with just sitting on the floor? And I had this moment when we were in Bath as well. We were in the Roman baths.
yeah,
And the Roman baths are all interesting, but once you've seen one Roman relic, you've kind of seen all of them.
Right.
And so I was keen to just sort of sit down on the stone and just read my book.
yeah,
I just sat down as our mum was browsing the things and kind of go a few minutes further ahead, listen, do some token listening to the audio guide to get our money's worth, and then just sit down and read. And it was so liberating that I can just sit wherever I want to just read a book. And I haven't really had that like acute feeling
Yeah.
since like being a kid.
yeah. That's kind of what I mean. Yeah, I feel the same way about the train thing. Back when I had like a real job and a daily commute, yeah, the train would be kind of packed in the mornings, and everyone will be standing up unless you're seated on a seat. And most people were wearing suits. A bunch of people weren't wearing suits, so it's not like clothing didn't really allow it, but you just wouldn't see people sitting cross-legged on the floor. And so I'd often just do that. And like you said, initially I felt a bit weird about it, but then I was like, nah, I think like there's no reason not to do this. I think people are missing out. Yeah.
Well, so you just sit on the floor while people are standing around you.
Yeah, I'm sitting down. Everyone else, just like people are standing around me. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so you literally are cross-legged on the floor while people are
Yeah,
standing
yeah,
around
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Didn't people look at you weird?
I don't know. They were probably thinking, man, this guy has the right idea. But if I do it now,
This
it's gonna look like
yeah.
I'm copying him.
Man, this guy's so confident. I wish I could be like that to just sit on the floor.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard to like really put yourself back in your shoes from when you were a kid. But I think, yeah, I think stuff like this of like just generally how or what the options seem to be. Yeah, I think are very different. And I think when you're adult, the options are stand in the standing area, sit in the sitting area, or lie down in the lying area. Like I feel like
Yeah.
and I think it extends outside of that, as a wider metaphor of adult life, where it's like designated areas for designated things, and as a proper adult, you go about your life doing the designated things in the designated areas. Whereas I think when you're a kid, like there's just fewer designated things and areas that you're concerned about.
Yeah, one thing I think that's a big difference between kid and adult is I wonder if this is true for you. Like as a kid, I had no qualms about running. As an adult, whenever I run, I feel a bit self-conscious that I'm running.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
And so if I'm running for the train, like half of my concern is, am I going to make the train on time? The other half of my concern is, am I looking sufficiently suave and smooth and adult-like running for this train?
Right, right, yeah,
Or is my backpack like sprawling everywhere and am I just looking like an absolute shambles?
yeah,
And there's often moments where, if it's like on those rare occasions where I go down to the shops to get a coffee or a pasty or something, I sometimes think, why don't I just run?
yeah, yeah.
But especially if I'm like wearing jeans and stuff, I sort of feel I'm not allowed to run in jeans. I have to
Right.
have my running clothing on in order to sort of feel socially acceptable to
Yeah, yeah.
run. I haven't yet done the running thing while wearing jeans and boots just for the bounce, but
Right.
I will one day I will have the confidence to run to the corner shop rather than
Wow.
inshallah.
Yeah, I think the running thing's really funny. I think I had a similar running epiphany after I went on my first run in 2018. So like I ran this kind of 5K basically, and that was the first time I'd ever run any distance. And then I was like, whoa, I can actually run for like minutes on end and I won't die. And then I was like, whoa, why am I walking anywhere? Like if you can run for like 2 to 5 minutes without getting like super tired, and most people can, then you can literally just get to places 3 to 5 times faster or something. And so there was a long while where I would just like run, sort of jog instead of walking to most things. But I haven't done too much of that. I guess I'm not really in a hurry anymore.
Yeah. I guess do you not feel somewhat self-conscious of running in an area while other people are walking?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But like, yeah, then you just kind of ignore that, right?
Yeah, the time saving is is worth the
Yeah,
the being a social outcast and pariah
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Nice.
I think as if I think back to like primary school, like year 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think I've said this before on the podcast. I think back then I just did a lot more vibing and a lot less thinking.
A lot more vibing. What do you mean by that? Then more like you'll do whatever you feel like and not what you think you should be doing in a moment.
No, I think I just mean like less thinking and less analyzing of things.
And do you think you only think that because you now, you've got the recency effect of the fact that you overanalyze everything, and B, you're just more capable of analyzing things than you were back then? I feel like I was pretty analytical. I had some pretty like, some pretty elaborate thought processes
Oh, yeah.
behind like why this girl would like me or wouldn't like me, and yeah, I feel like I was a thinking human. Um,
Oh, a thinking man,
yeah,
upright man, if you will.
yeah, a philosopher, some might say. Um,
Huh. What was the thought process about why the girl would like you?
oh,
Age
there was
eight.
this whole like there was this game they used to play like so, there were these three girls in my class in primary school who enjoyed playing a game called Kiss Chase.
Okay,
I don't know
okay.
if you're familiar with the game of Kiss Chase.
What is the game? Maybe I am.
The game is you chase boys around, and when you catch them, you kiss them.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That sounds like fun.
So this was a thing, and one of the girls who I had like this huge crush on was one of this trio who would play Kiss Chase
Oh,
on the
nice.
regular, and I would
Nice.
invent all these elaborate scenarios about like, okay, right, um, because I was pretty fast at running, and so like when I was involved in Kiss Chase, I was like, oh, I don't want to get caught. And I was thinking, oh, but I really want her to catch me. So I was like,
Oh, I love it.
inventing all these like elaborate
Amazing.
structures about how I
Yeah.
was gonna like, fake trip and like, have my laces undone and fake trip on my laces so that,
Yeah.
but crucially only when this one
Yeah.
girl was like in my vicinity and not the other
Yeah.
two.
Oh no, don't
you
catch
know.
me.
Yeah.
Please don't catch me and kiss me.
Mate, I was a real philosopher back in the day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was me aged
Okay.
8.
Okay. No, no. Like, I think that's the level of analysis that you know, I certainly dabbled in as well. I don't know if I'd go.
Oh yeah. What was your analysis in this department?
I'm trying to think. Um,
There was the whole like piano lesson
yeah, I took.
situation, right?
I took piano lessons because the girl I fancied also took piano. Was also planning to take piano lessons. So there was a lot of analysis there, obviously.
Mm, obviously. How did that end up going for you?
I mean, nothing happened. Like, I mean,
Oh, drat.
maybe our hands touched on the piano at some point.
Yeah. It was all worth it.
Yeah, yeah. I do feel like there was something there. If I'm honest with you,
Yeah,
I felt there was something there. It's just when you're 8 or 9, it's unclear what you're supposed to do.
quite. So you've taken up the piano recently as well. Is there anyone else in the picture?
No, I haven't. I haven't touched anyone else's hands on the piano for decades.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Okay. What was the level of analysis I might have done as an 8-year-old?
Did you ever fantasize about running away from home?
I think that didn't come until 11, 12.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Well, I thought like primary school was hunky dory. Like, what was going on with you, mate?
So I like anytime I feel like because I was the older child, I feel like I was rulings were often in your favor rather than in mine
Really? Are you
at the time.
serious?
Yeah, genuinely.
What rulings when we were
Oh,
8 and 9?
anytime there was any grounding to be had, I felt
Yeah.
I was getting the short end of the straw, short end of the stick, whatever the phrase is. And you were a little whiny bitch, and so you would complain at the slightest provocation. And then because I was like the older sibling, I would get told off for it and grounded and stuff. And I felt this was deeply unfair, and I felt like I had my autonomy taken away from me. And so occasionally I'd be like, you know what, fine, but if I wanted to, I could run away from home. Um, and there was this, there was
Oh my god.
in our address on Queens Road, we drove past this park where we used to kind of frequent on occasion to fake play tennis or something like that. And there was like a series of bushes and trees in the entrance to this park, and I had that pegged as my hideout. I was like, right, when I run away from home,
Yeah.
I'm gonna hide amongst these trees, and I can get like so I think I was probably reading like Alex Rider books at the time, and so I was thinking, if I needed to eat, I could kill a squirrel, and I was thinking, oh, all I need is a laptop, and then I can find like Wi-Fi from somewhere nearby, and then at least I'll have a computer.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think I didn't really know what I could do with a computer. The most I ever did was I discovered like the built-in dictation feature on Windows with
Microsoft Sam.
Microsoft Sam, exactly. And then I spent like dozens of hours like configuring this. It didn't need dozens of hours of configuration. But I thought I was like the coolest computer hacker ever. I discovered this secret, this like,
Yeah,
backdoor Microsoft Sam, and I could
yeah,
talk to Microsoft Sam, and it would like write things down on
yeah,
Notepad.
yeah.
And so I fancy myself as a bit of a computer hacker in addition to a philosopher. So that was my plan for running away from home. I'm
Mate,
surprised you didn't harbor those fantasies.
I didn't
But I
harbor
guess
those
everything
fantasies.
was ruled in your favor anyway, so this life was pretty hunky dory back then.
I think we used to grass each other up a lot. I think that was
Hmm.
pre-pact. I think the no grassing pact came when we were like 14 or something.
Yeah, something like that.
And so yeah, I imagine there was a lot of grassing, and yeah, maybe you got grounded or something.
Yeah, like
But like,
I would be a bit of a rebel, and then you would just tell on me.
right, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't remember. I didn't go on the computer. I don't think. Did we go on the computer that much back then?
yeah,
We had this dial-up internet connection, and like, what would you do? I don't think I even knew that like online games existed. Like I hadn't discovered
yeah,
online whatever. I remember we played pinball.
yeah. It was a lot of pinball. I think a lot of Minesweeper once I discovered how to play that. I would go on AOL because we had AOL the web browser and just like click around, um, you know, as one does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what I used to use a computer for. Who
I'm
knows?
trying to even think like what did I do after school? And I think I've kind of touched on this in previous podcast episodes, where I think I didn't really have my own kind of my own life at home.
Hmm.
Like, if I think about my life now, like sitting at home on the computer is a large part of it, and as a teenager, that has always been like a big part of it. But before I had like before I started using the internet, I can't remember what I used to get up to. I mean, you get back from school at like 4 p.m. There's a good few hours in the evening where like, what the hell do you do? I guess at some point we got a PS2, and there was maybe a bit of
Hmm.
that. And I guess there's a TV, and maybe there's a bit of that. But like, I think there was an awful lot of like, I have no idea what I did. Probably just like rearranging my Pokemon cards, Lego, little bit. And I think because of this lack of an inner life at home, I think it kind of heightened the experience of like hanging out with friends at friends' houses and stuff. Hey,
Hmm.
I said this before on the podcast, but I think back then in primary school, when it was, going to a friend's house would be like the best thing ever every single time. It would absolutely bang without exception. And then when it came to going home, that would be,
Absolutely devastating without exception.
yeah, yeah. When it came to going home, it would be like genuinely really devastating. Like it would be awful. And it's not, no beef to like the home life. Yeah,
That was fine.
it was fine,
Yeah.
But I didn't really have, yeah, an individual life, I guess.
Mm.
I Yeah, it felt like when I wasn't doing things with other people, it was almost like you press pause on your existence. Whereas I think once you have the internet and the computer,
Yeah.
then you can have an existence outside of other people. I guess you read a lot of books.
Yeah, that's what I used to do back in the day. I'm like, yeah, basically after school I would just read. Then we got like a subscription to the local library, and so I got through all of the R.L. Stein books. I got through all of the Enid Blyton books. Go through Harry Potter repeatedly, again and
Yeah.
again and again. Then all the Alex Rider books, the Cherub books as they came out, and yeah, just books. Books were my true friend.
Right.
Um, yeah, so I think broadly that was what I was doing after school,
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think
reading trashy fiction.
I just didn't read. I think I've
Yeah.
read a little bit, but like,
At
yeah,
one point, you got the book Captain Underpants out of the library. I remember this, and it was like this was like the first book that you'd read
I remember this.
or
Yeah,
something.
it was basically a comic book, really.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I distinctly remember I didn't even like the book that much. I just
Mm.
felt like, oh, I need to like books or something. Oh yeah, I love Camp
So you went for
Underpants.
Captain Underpants.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
Right.
I didn't. It didn't resonate.
I see. I remember. I feel like your identity was a lot less bookish than mine was.
Yeah, for sure.
where you were more of like a tomboy running around kind of vibes, and I was more like, read a romance book kind of vibes.
You're
And
reading
then when you
romance books
started,
back then?
yeah, I discovered this like this series called Sugar Secrets when I was in the library, and it
What
was
the
like so
hell are
sick.
you? I've never heard of this. Was this like a guilty thing you did in the corner of the library that you didn't bring back home? What
I
was
did
it?
bring it back home. Yeah, of
Did
course I
you?
brought it back home, mate.
Sugar
Yeah.
Secrets. I have no
Yeah, it was a
recollection
great
of.
series. It was like it was this whole like series of books about like life in like a high school where like relationship drama and all this sort of stuff. And this was like my literally my very first experience of this sort of stuff
Okay.
when I was like 8. When I found this book, Sugar Secrets and Revenge, in the library. Um, I mean, I wasn't a huge connoisseur of the romance genre. I think had I been more confident in taking the books out in the library and like saying to the librarian, can I have this one, please?
Yeah.
I've been a bit more confident about that. I probably would have been.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like your identity was more of, hey, I'm too cool for books kind of vibes. And
Mate,
so when you got Captain Underpants, it was like, oh, it's a book, but it's like it ticks the box of like, oh, okay,
no,
it's a sort of
that's
tomboy kind of
absurd.
book.
That's absolutely absurd. I had no such like baggage
Okay.
associated with being into books or not being into books. I just wasn't.
Okay.
I just intrinsically was not into reading or books, and I felt some pressure of like we have these book days and stuff like this, and
Mm.
everyone's like has to buy a book or something. Like it wasn't like a too cool for books thing at all.
Okay.
That wasn't the level of analysis that I was
Oh, I
even
see.
capable of at the time.
Fair play.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember you also started reading Mr. Monday, that series.
Yeah, we were introduced to that by via like I think we read it in year four or something as a class or something like that. And again,
Yeah.
like I feel like I was performing being into it.
Yes, I feel like you were. You would talk about how, oh, this is a really good book, and I would try and read it and think like, it's actually not that good. And also,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
do you even know what's going on here? Well, what's actually going on?
Yeah,
I never
I didn't
understood
have a
it.
clue. Didn't have a clue, mate.
So
Not
you
the
were
podcast.
performatively reading, and then the next one, like, oh, Grim Tuesday. Oh yeah, I've got to get that new book. And I was a
Yeah.
bit like, wait a minute. Like, what are you seeing that I'm not from these books? I literally have no idea
What
what's
does
going
he
on.
see?
Yeah, the denizens and stuff like that, and like the keys to the kingdom, and I still to this day I
Yeah,
still have
mate.
no idea what these books were actually about,
I,
and I
I
read
didn't
all of them.
I didn't have a
Yeah.
clue at the time either, and I remember performatively being into it because like I didn't have any like books or book aspect of my life or something. I don't know why I felt this pressure, but I felt like everyone like reads books or something,
Yeah.
and I need to be into a book. Yeah, that was weird. I've actually never reflected on that since. That is weird. I'm cringing on behalf of my 7-year-old self.
Excellent. I'm glad.
Performatively being,
Performatively reading Mr. Monday, having absolutely no idea what it's about.
didn't have a clue, honestly, mate. Like,
Yeah.
man. Okay, listen, I actually have to go. It's dinner time. This has been
Great.
fun.
Yes. You want to read a review, and we'll wrap things up.
Yeah. Actually, let me just do an insight of the week
Oh
before
yeah.
we do that. I think. Have you ever had a you're ever chatting to a friend and they're like, "Oh man, I had like the weirdest dream last night," and they'll tell you about their dream or whatever. Does that happen? Happens from
Yeah.
time to time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah.
And I think, yeah, the thing I've been thinking around that recently is that I really like those conversations. There's something very liberating about those conversations because there's no need for your brain to try and understand or make sense of any of it. I think like discussing a friend's dream with them is like it's almost the purest form of vibing you can have because like you just don't like not the 90% of your brain that is like trying to understand stuff and make sense of things, it's switched off because it doesn't matter. It's a dream, and so you're just kind of vibing, like straight vibing about this dream. Like you're not trying to make there's no analysis, and so like I really enjoy those conversations. I feel like they're very pure. Like it's very infinite game esque where there's no purpose to it. There's no end goal. It's purely for its own sake. It's about the journey, not the destination. Like it is just like raw vibes. Anyway, I had one of those this morning. I was like, damn, this is good shit.
Excellent. Excellent. I wonder if you feel a similar way about talking about the weather.
I think I've said this on the podcast before. I really enjoy small talk. Yeah, for that reason. Anyway, let me read a review and then we'll call it quits. I think maybe we read this one out last time. It's from the 17th of June. Yeah, I think we read it out last time. We actually haven't had a review since. It was a 4-star review
Reviews.
titled "Inconsistent." Yeah, I think we should genuinely be more consistent with the podcast because, like, yes, we could just like be inconsistent about it, but I think you lose the mojo and you lose the
Yeah.
momentum and stuff. Like if we
I
do this
agree.
every 3 weeks or something, every time we come back to it, it's like, oh yeah, what's this whole podcast thing again? What do we do? What are we doing here? Kind of thing. Whereas if
Yeah.
it's actually a weekly thing, like I feel like I'm more excited for it when it's something we're regularly doing rather than oh
Yeah.
shit, we haven't done a podcast for a few weeks. Yeah, should we do a podcast? You know?
Yeah. I mean, we've got it as a recurring calendar event now, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, apologies for the inconsistencies, everyone. We're back on track. Anyway,
Back on track. Yeah.
thanks for
All right.
listening.
Good
See you
session,
next
everyone.
time.
Catch you later. Bye-bye. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening.
If you like this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on the Apple Podcasts website if you're not using an iPhone. There's a link in the show notes.
If you've got any thoughts on this episode or any ideas for new podcast topics, we'd love to get an audio message from you with your conundrum, question, or just anything that we could discuss.
Yeah, if you're up for having your voice played on the podcast and your question being the springboard for our discussion, email us an audio file MP3 or voice note to hi@notoverthinking.com.
If you've got thoughts but you'd rather not have your voice played publicly, that's fine as well. Tweet or DM us at NOverthinking on Twitter, please.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.